Friday morning, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Finding God in the Dark podcast. My name is Don.
And my name is Jonathan.
And this week we are going to talk about a film that is currently in the top 10, I think, still on Netflix.
Yeah.
Um, it- it's called K-pop Demon Hunters. Now, I want to first give a shout out to James Lee. James is the pastor of the Hope Church in Voorhees, and
Yeah.
he was at the retreat that I was at this week. And
Mm.
when I was talking a little bit about the podcast, he said, "Oh, tell me you're doing Cake Pop Demon Hunters this week." I said, "As a matter of fact, we are." So this one's for you, James. Not that we chose it with him in mind or anything like that, but um, I have to say, before we get into themes or anything, um, I knew this was a computer animated anime type of film. I expected it to be kind of goofy and, well, we'll see. It's very popular. It's getting a lot of positive buzz. This was a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Um, I'll give it credit for having some stuff worth talking about and thinking about.
Yeah.
And that's what we're always looking for in these films. Now, I will say, I was talking to my youngest son, Ian, about it
Okay.
just last night. Now, I watched it Tuesday night, but I was talking to him about it last night. And I said, I thought maybe, you like anime and manga and that sort of thing. Maybe you'll like to watch this film. And he says, I don't know, Dad, the music is buns. I went,
Okay.
okay, whatever.
I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I'm assuming
Well,
it's bad.
we would say a different word,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't think yeah, it was pop music. It was,
Yeah.
but it was not terrible. It was catchy,
Yeah.
But the story is really what we want to talk about. The themes are what we want to talk about. So, again, for those of you who might be new to the podcast, I want to give Jonathan a lot of credit here because we we change off who's, picking a film each
Yeah.
week. Or we'll talk about it and decide on a film ahead of time. But Jonathan does a lot of the legwork here. A day or so before we start to record, Jonathan sends me a list with themes and
Yeah.
quotes and characters. And,
Yeah.
so thank you, Jonathan, for doing that because it does keep us on task. Because I would
Absolutely.
wander.
Executive producing. So,
Exactly. Exactly. So where do you want to start, John?
um, let's see. I I guess let's hit the low-hanging fruit.
Hmm.
This movie had a lot about shame, about the idea of inner voices in your head, the
Hmm.
idea of sin, the idea of inner demons. I mean, all of
Yeah.
that stuff. You know, um, I there's a quote that kind of rings in my head sometimes about that Rob Bell, a well-known pastor or used to be a pastor, used to say, he goes, "You have to recognize the tapes in your head and you have to change them." And there's something that really connects to a lot of this. The primary character, Rumi, she is half demon, half human, and she's been raised to feel bad about that and feel like she has to hide that. And a huge theme in the movie is not only her, but her helping the rest of the main characters recognize they need to accept who they are and recognize that a lot of the stuff they've been told about themselves is not true.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that and to recognize their self-worth. My therapist, well, my former therapist, used to call it your inner voice,
Yeah,
and what is your, sometimes you've got to change your inner voice, and what your inner voice is telling you is not always the truth. And you're right. It's a huge theme in this film that, and it's, as you say, it's not just Rumi. It's not because you primarily follow her, and she's
yeah,
sort of the front man of the group Huntrix. But it is all the members, but I think it's also other people in because you'll see there's a scene later on in the film where the the head demon, I don't remember his name now, but um he's sort of manipulating thousands and thousands of people by playing
Yeah,
on their fears and
yeah,
playing on their inner voices and drawing them sort of to him to consume them. Which there's a whole folks forgive us here if we mispronounce names.
yes,
This
it's
is a Korean film, and we're
yeah,
not Korean, so we're going to do our best.
yeah,
But um, and so there's a lot of that as well. I think the Asian kind of traditional Asian spirituality themes running here as well, with the demons and that sort of stuff.
yeah,
So um, yeah, that one hops right off the film, right?
yeah.
Like you said, low hanging fruit. One of the it's interesting because one of the quotes that Rumi says to this character he's like the leader of the demon boy band that they're competing with.
Yeah,
Go with us, folks. Haven't seen the film, just go with us.
yeah,
Um, and she says to him, nobody gets to decide how you hope, how you feel
yeah,
hope.
yeah,
And that's really, it is in that very same theme. Nobody gets to decide for you what, what you are,
yeah,
what your self-image is. It's your self-image.
yeah.
Um, I teach that to my boys sometimes, and my youngest son Ian, who I've already mentioned here, he just got his hair dyed yesterday. Now, I think he wanted it blue, but it came up more like Kelly green, like Eagles green,
Oh, okay,
and he's okay with that.
okay.
Make his dad proud. He's okay with that.
Yeah.
But I said to him, you understand that there's going to be some kids who give you a hard time because
I'm
you dyed your hair, right?
yeah,
He says, yeah, I know. I said, and what's your response? And, just proof that the kid's been listening to me. Oh, well, I don't care. I didn't ask for their input. I said, all right, son. That's that's what I'd have told you. I didn't ask for your input. So
yeah.
yeah. So what else we got?
Um, I mean, I think also too a pretty low hanging situation. Although there's really no ex. One of the things you could critique. There's a couple things I would say you could critique about this film about its themes because it talks about the power of social media, but really doesn't investigate it. Like it really doesn't push hard on it. It talks about the kind of both good and evil are fighting for clicks, they're fighting for fans, they're fighting for popularity. But there was never really a critique of should we be fighting for this and is this how we want to spend our time and and I would say that's it makes sense because you're literally this is coming out of a social media driven platform, right? It's on Netflix, and
It's on Netflix.
yeah. I don't have any kind of false hope that Netflix will really critique the algorithm. Since,
Critique itself. Yeah, not
yeah,
likely, right?
but I do think that there's room for that to have those conversations about, you know, is this kind of need to get more clicks, more likes, more fans, more friends, on social media, is that a healthy thing? And not to spiral too far into everything that's going on in the world in terms of violence, but it seems like you can make a pretty strong argument that the uptick in violence over the last 4 or 5 years have been deeply connected with social media. The
I think that's a very clear correlation. Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
and so you know, are we being so wrapped up in these worlds? Are we siloing ourselves so much that we're not actually valuing real relationships and real connections?
Yeah.
And to steal a line from kids of our generation or our kids' generation. Are you touching grass? Are you going outside? Are you engaging with the actual world?
Yeah.
And this movie kind of touches on social media and on some level is negative around the idea of them both fighting for popularity, but they don't take the next step and investigate, is it good that we're constantly worrying about this stuff? And, you know,
It's interesting you mentioned that because I had someone just this past Sunday in church during prayers. He actually stood up and he said he wanted to encourage people. You can't see it because of the screen. It's my
yeah,
phone.
yeah,
Put this down, and then
yeah,
he held up his Bible and said, "Pick this up."
yeah,
And I said that's wise advice. That's
yeah,
wise advice. Because you're right. We get fed more of what we react to, right? So we tend to become either very siloed,
yeah,
so we only hear from people that we like,
yeah.
or we get angry because we get a lot of people we don't like, and so we want to argue with them. You
Yeah,
know?
I heard two really good podcasts this week. And one was taped right before Charlie Cook was assassinated between Ben Shapiro and Ezra Klein, who are on opposite sides of the political spectrum.
Very much so,
But
yeah.
they had a really interesting conversation about kind of the world and politics. And then today I'm actually listening to Ezra Klein had on his show Ralph Halford. I think that's how you pronounce it. He's a conservative columnist in the New York Times that writes a lot about religion and again on the other side of the spectrum, and they had a really good conversation about, okay, how do we move this forward, how do and I do think that's the kind of stuff we need to start valuing, that idea that you need to push outside your boundaries, that the people you don't agree with, you should try to find ways to build relationships with them. You know, those kind of things I think are necessary and are things that we all should encourage and value.
We sometimes maybe just need to stop and ask ourselves, like, how many friends do we have that don't think like we do?
Yeah,
Like, look, my best friend in the world, he and I, we're good buddies,
yeah,
and we think very similarly,
yeah,
like we were raised in the same household, which is fine.
yeah,
But he's not my only friend, you know. I think that's well, I can say it again. It's a huge element of what you and I do here.
yeah,
That, we don't think alike, and that's okay.
yeah,
Because we can sit and have these conversations about this sort of stuff. And even if we want to, we can have conversations about, and we've shown this, we can have conversations about controversial stuff and,
yeah.
not hate each other.
So I mean, I guess I am really interested in critiquing social media and having kind of a conversation about,
Yeah.
I don't remember who said it. It was a sociologist somewhere that I either heard or saw on TV, and he said he really feels like in 50 years we might look at social media the same way we look at cigarettes. That they're things we should encourage people not to get involved with. And I do think I do think we have to recognize that we've kind of fallen into this. It's an older moniker, but it talked about news coverage that if it bleeds, it leads. The controversial stuff, the stuff that's going to cause the fight, the stuff that's going to cause the disagreement, get people yelling back and forth or shock people. That's the stuff that social media drives us toward because that's what gets eyeballs. That's what gets, and so recognizing though that that isn't life is really important. Like the vast majority of people on the left and the right don't want people to be assassinated. And so sometimes to forget that the side you disagree with is not the 1% of people that are being kind of highlighted
Yeah.
is a good thing to remember.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. As a and I've probably said this on this podcast before, but a wise member of a former appointment church of mine said, you're not required to attend every argument to which you are invited."
Yes. Yep.
So, thank you, Tempe. So, um, things I think it's kind of fun to talk about. Now, you wrote it down as music as a defensive weapon.
Yes. Yeah.
I think you can also look at that as music as a unifying force as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
it's in the film. The music of the band Huntrix is reinforcing this barrier
Kind of
to keep the
a
demon
shield.
world out.
Yeah,
Yeah, like a
shield to keep
shield.
the different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have actually done this when I've taught theology at my churches. I've actually done sometimes a class where we talk about the power of music, and I literally bring music up in different genres and talk about how these are these are songs that were meant to feed the soul. These were songs that were meant to protest an injustice and give hope to the group that was dealing with the and I think sometimes we forget that that is woven into why human beings create music is to bring people together, to give hope in the midst of oppression or injustice, to critique a system that needs to change. But it's utilized to try to connect people to those causes or to those issues, or to give people a sense of well-being. You know, um, I think it's just amazing how music works and how oftentimes we don't think about it,
Yeah,
which is
it's
a
it like poetry, it's an expression of emotion,
yeah,
and the things, again, emotionally what unites us in a
yeah.
lot of ways. Um it's funny because just this past Sunday, now I'm doing a I'm doing the resource from the conference, both end, the preaching resource. And so last Sunday was sacred and secular.
Okay.
And I talked about, well, I quoted lyrics from a song.
Hmm.
And if you took the lyrics completely out of context, you might think it's almost a worship song.
Yeah.
You hear the lyrics and it's you oh, no, I don't I can't remember them. But anyway, the song
Yeah.
is from U2,
Yeah.
and it's called Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. And it is a song about longing and searching for something greater, something bigger. Now, look, I understand that some members, at least two of the members of U2, are Christian.
Yeah.
They are not in any way, shape, or form have they ever been a Christian band.
No.
And so, again, it's for me, it's this is a kind of a unifying thing. Here's this secular music that speaks directly to your Christian faith. And, I actually had somebody say, I wonder if we could use a song like that in worship. I said, well, it's been done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not by me, but it has been done.
I always am very interested in the things that you find across human cultures. Music fascinates me for in terms of spirituality, it fascinates me. There isn't really a spiritual tradition that you can find that doesn't use some kind of rocks or beads or something like that in prayer. And
Mhm.
those kind of things are always fascinating to me about like why do people gravitate towards certain things? And
Yeah.
then in my feeling is there's always something there that you should try to tap into because if it's that universal, it says something that will probably connect to your soul and it'd be beneficial to you if you find some way to connect with it.
Yeah. In this whole discussion of music, I'm kind of flashing back to our discussion of Sinners several months ago.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
same kind of unifying force. Um, and you're right. a defensive thing as well, right?
Yeah,
Because where do is our kind of our fallback position in times of grief, in times of sorrow, or times of pain? We go back. I know that when I was having a particularly difficult time in my the process towards ordination, one of the things I fell back on was the Christian music that had really fortified me and built me up. And it wasn't like traditional hymns, although I'm a kind of a traditionalist and I love traditional hymns, but it was more the Christian, like, rock music that kind of nourished me a lot, bands like the Supertones and Third Day and such.
yeah,
So yeah, it becomes sort of like in the film, sort of a fortress, a defensive thing, um,
yeah.
which was an interesting, an interesting image. Um, what else?
I thought an interesting element of this movie, and I was kind of curious why they threw it in because it doesn't really pay off, is when you first get into this movie, I got the sense that they were going to make a statement about the importance of Sabbath and rest,
Yeah,
and then they never pay that off.
they never get it.
Yeah, it's almost like someone said, "Hey, tamp down that idea of taking time away. Like, take that out of the script because
There's now to be fair, there's one scene
yeah,
where they do go to the bathhouse together and
yeah,
they're relaxing in the hot
yeah,
tub.
yeah,
But like right after that, they're just going, we're going back to the couch, we're
yeah,
going to the couch, we're going, and then they run into fans and go, the heck with the couch, you know? So interesting,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, so I guess I was hoping for that payoff where like it ended with them on a beach or them relaxing or and it just kind of ended there because I do think that's another critique that I think is a part of a problem in our society where this idea of it's essential for all of us to take time away and rest and reflect and put down our phones, turn off our computers, and just kind of be with the people that we love or be in nature or whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah, I wonder though, because it's something, for us as clergy, it's
Yeah.
something that really gets pounded into our heads a lot.
Yes.
The idea of Sabbath and the idea of rest. And I wonder if that's not our focus so much.
Yeah.
And the maybe that's just sort of an aside for the creators of the film.
Sure. Sure.
For us, it's like, yeah, can I see that? I need that. I know I need that. I understand
Yeah.
how much I need that.
Yeah.
But uh, I don't know if the creators here have that same focus that we have, right?
Yeah.
So for them, it's kind of a joke.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting because I'm like, you could have ended in them all in the bathhouse, and
Yeah,
that could have been where it ended. And they chose to go like, okay, we're done. Now let's go back to work. You know?
yeah. That was and again, I think I take it as, yeah, that was cute, I guess. It kind of played into the characters. They're overachievers, right?
Yeah. Well, it's to me, I kind of wondered if it said something about the culture the movie was made in. Because I wonder if it was made in Europe or made in America, if you would have ended on the rest note. But
Probably.
because Asian cultures really usually overdo,
Hmm.
and that's a problem that a lot of Asian cultures struggle with, is kind of like, okay, they had a day off. Now it's time to get to work.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. You're probably right. I mean, that's a fair observation that, uh, like I said, overachievers, right? And uh, but we try not. Well, as clergy, at least we try not to be. Um,
Yep.
what else? There's I think, well, you touched on this in the notes. There's a sense here of the negativity of that, right? In insofar as where Rumi tends to go wrong is when she isolates, right?
Yes.
She steps away from her group instead of, being open to them about what her problem is and what her issue is.
Yeah.
She tries to hide it and she runs away.
Well,
Um,
it's, again, it's this thing that you can talk about in terms of social media. You could have 1,000 friends on social media, but they're not really your friends,
uh,
and you're
yeah,
still in isolation, right? You still don't have someone to talk to in the middle of the night if you have a problem. You still,
yeah,
and but I do think I don't know. I'm sure there are different reasons for it. I'm guessing I could think of some, but I do feel like isolation is a growing problem in our culture.
yeah,
We have a tendency to move away from family. We have a tendency uh, to kind of move on a regular basis, to move across country, to connect more with people online than people down the block. Like, I'll be really honest. I don't know if I could name more than a handful of my neighbors. Like, and that would probably be
wait,
pushing.
you can name that many?
No, like I said, I doubt I could get to five. You know.
I I'm certain I couldn't get to five. I know the folks right next door because their son plays football with my son.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's it. So yeah, I know I see what you're saying.
But that sense of being, again, one of my heaviest critiques about America is we tend to overemphasize, I think to our detriment, individualism. It's about me, it's about my family, it's about my needs. And I do think that pays off in isolation, where, the people down the block don't matter as much. The people at the store, you don't know. Like this kind of connecting with people outside your direct family is something that we don't often do.
Yeah. Now, I want to touch on something from one of the quotes and this quote is from a line in one of the songs.
Yeah,
Okay. And they talk about all the beauty in the broken glass.
yeah,
Um, Now that's a wonderful visual,
hmm,
right? We see that, and we kind of, particularly in churches, we see that, our stained glass windows are basically made from broken glass.
yeah,
But I think there's even more to that when we understand, and I've had to have this conversation with people at times that God isn't interested in our perfection,
no,
right? There was only ever one perfect person, and he died for our imperfection. He
yeah,
died because of our brokenness.
yeah,
Um, and look, I reflect back on my own call into ministry. My own call into ministry is about my own brokenness and how I understand what people sitting in those pews are going through because I've been there
yeah,
and I can recognize that and I can own that for myself. And trust me, took me a long time to do that. It took
yeah,
me a long time to say, that's what God wants from me. God wants my brokenness,
yeah,
not my perfection. Because I was, straight A student, perfect,
yeah,
whatever. And I'm not.
yeah,
And,
yeah. I mean,
that's a really powerful statement in just a lyric in one of the songs.
yeah. I mean, it connects with like ideas like Henry Nouwen's idea of the wounded healer, which is kind of a classic
Right.
pastoral theology text. But
Hmm.
that's the argument, right? Is that we often can speak more powerfully through our wounds, and we can connect with people when we are vulnerable and connect with their vulnerability. I often use the example of growing up. I would often go fishing with my grandfather, and he was my one of my grandfathers was a pastor, and he would go not all the time, but at least once every other month would go to kind of a rescue mission, and he would preach. And a couple times I went with him, and before we went fishing, we did that. And these very tough men who were dealing with addiction and drug use, by the end of his sermon, they were usually crying. And it was because he could talk about his journey from alcoholism to being a pastor, and he could give them hope. And I usually tell people, I could have given a better sermon, but I would not have connected with them the way he could connect with them because he had had that experience of addiction and I didn't.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's I want to, maybe as an aside, maybe to just anybody randomly who happens to come across this podcast.
Yeah.
Um, you're not called to be perfect.
Yeah.
You're not called to be complete and whole. You're made whole by Christ. And that's where you need to put your faith. That's where you need to, to put your energy into following Christ.
Yeah.
I got all evangelical there. Sorry.
No, no.
Not sorry, but I'm sorry. You know
Honestly,
what I mean?
the best churches are the ones that recognize that their hospitals, uh, not country clubs for saints.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's a great note to tie this up on, I think.
Yeah.
And talk about what we're going to watch next week. Now, we have already talked about this. We've already kind of decided what we're going to do. For those who've been following for a while, you know that we watched 28 Days Later, and then we watched 28 Weeks Later. Yeah.
Yeah.
So today, as this video is published, so Friday, the 19th of September, 28 years later is going to be available on Prime
No, it's going to be available on Amazon, I think, on the 20th. Yeah.
on the 20, okay, on Saturday. So tomorrow, as you see this.
Yeah.
Um, and so we're going to watch that just to complete that trilogy for next week. 28 years later. Now, my understanding is Danny Boyle is actually going for another film after that in
Yeah.
the same universe.
Yeah.
We'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
Um, but that's for a time down the road.
And
And
I think I have the perfect one for 2 weeks from now.
okay, well, we'll
You
talk
have
about
H.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll talk
We'll
about
talk
it
about
after we sign off. I do want to say, and we got a couple of minutes left, but I
it.
do want to say that I was at a retreat this week. I had to leave early because of some medical issues, but um, our my new district superintendent, Kate Monahan, has agreed to come on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
So keep your ear open for that. Also, another colleague of ours who is on my district is also interested in joining the discussion on occasion. So I've already mentioned his name, James Lee. You are welcome to come on
Yeah.
the podcast anytime.
Yeah.
We love having the discussion. Okay, we don't limit it to just John and I. It just
Yeah.
so happens that we set the time aside to do it every week.
You
But
can have Herod be on this podcast. It's okay.
it's true. You're allowed to have hair and be. So, well, Evan does still. Good for
Yes,
him,
that's
right?
true.
All
Yeah.
right, friends. So for next week, we're going to watch 28 Years Later. It will be available on Amazon Prime this weekend if you would like to follow along and watch that and join the discussion with us next week. Until then, keep on finding God in the dark. We will see you all next Friday. Take care and God bless.
Like,
Oh, hey, you made it all the way to the end of the video. Well, thanks for watching. We appreciate your support. And friends, if you find anything that's really wonderful or entertaining or helpful in your Christian walk, we want to encourage you to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share this video with your friends. We publish every Friday morning at 10 a.m. And we hope that you continue to find these videos and these discussions entertaining and informative. Take care and God bless. Bye.